So let's jump right into Apple v. Epic. 3 months after the trial concluded, Judge
Yes.
Yvonne Gonzalez Rogers ruled in favor of Apple on most counts. That Epic failed to show that Apple was a monopolist, that Epic breached developer contract, so the Fortnite ban was therefore justified, and that Epic must pay Apple 30% of the revenue from Epic Direct payments that were taken through Fortnite on iOS. So that's approximately 12 million total revenue. So I guess 30% of that from August to October 2020, and then an unknown amount from November to the present. But Epic did win on one important count: third-party payment systems. The ruling stated that Apple is not breaking antitrust laws, but that they are guilty of anti-competitive behavior, which, in my opinion, is just another way of saying that the antitrust laws need to be
not good.
updated for the digital age. But that's a separate conversation. Or that they need to make a new law that anti-competitive behavior is bad. I mean, what does it... Oh, okay, it doesn't matter. The point is, through a permanent injunction, Apple is now restrained and enjoined from prohibiting developers from including in their apps and their metadata buttons, external links, or other calls to action that direct customers to purchasing mechanisms.
Very good.
So this has to be in addition to in-app purchasing, and they are not allowed to prohibit developers from communicating with their customers through points of contact obtained voluntarily from customers through account registration within the app. So basically, the way that it worked before for iOS apps was that unless you had, so Netflix, for example, just had a sign-in. The app did absolutely nothing until you signed in, and you just had to somehow know already with your giant space brain that you had to go on Netflix's website, whether it's on a PC or on your mobile browser, create a Netflix account, pay for it, and then you could go sign in the app. So it just had to be this like blank wall with no instructions, which is obviously a terrible customer experience. So that's the way it worked before to manage to have outside of App Store payments. Now, what the judge is saying is that Apple cannot prevent you from having a button in your app that basically says, okay, click this to go create an account and pay, and then you can go back to the app and use it as you normally would.
It's way less toxic now, because that's like if they don't want you to be able to pay through the app or whatever, like that's kind of weird and stuff. But at the very least, let us communicate that to the user, etc. And previously, the answer to that was no. And now the answer to that is going to have to be yes, which is way better, because at least we can tell people what's happening. That was the most frustrating thing, is people would message our support and be like, yeah, like I tried to use your app, but like it was really weird. I couldn't like do stuff. It's like, yeah, we know. There's just nothing we can do about it. Yeah.
Now
Tim Sweeney seems to think that this isn't a win for developers.
Hold on, I was gonna jump in with something real quick here. Now, something that I don't know is how exactly this is going to be implemented. So the judge did specify buttons, external links, or other calls to action. Apple has to allow them, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Apple has to allow third-party payment services within the app itself. So it might only be a link leading outside of the app, like in Japan. So South Korea, meanwhile, has made it so that Apple has to allow in-app third-party payment services. So we don't know what this is going to end up looking like in the US.
Either way, there's at least something you can do here. This is significantly better than what it was. I'm going to go through Tim Sweeney's statement really quickly, because I want to say a statement that applies to both things. Tim Sweeney said, this isn't a win for developers or for consumers. Epic is fighting for fair competition among in-app payment methods and app stores for 1 billion consumers. So I would say this isn't like winning the war for developers and consumers. No. But this is definitely a win of a battle. This is definitely a significant improvement over what we had before. This isn't what Tim wants, and this isn't the end goal of what I would want.
No.
But
I
it's
mean,
still way better than what we had.
and
So like, yeah.
Mr. Sweeney overall is not super happy. I actually read through everything he's tweeted since the judge issued this ruling, and he's overall not impressed. Um, and in this, and we're in a situation now where even though uh, even though Epic kind of won in terms of now they can just have a button in the Fortnite app that could link you to a website where you could buy V-Bucks. Um, Tim is still saying, and I should say Tim Sweeney, because Apple also has Tim Cook. This is Tim versus Tim, grudge match. So Tim Sweeney
Tim Showdown.
also probably recognizes that entering payment information separately from what you've already got set up with Touch ID or Face ID is a significant source of friction. And you hear the term friction used a lot to talk about
Yes.
getting customers from the awareness end of the sales funnel to the transaction end of the sales funnel. And the less friction you can have along the way, the better. And we've probably all done it, whether it's the friction of, a tedious, what's the word I'm looking for? Those stupid little, a tedious CAPTCHA that you have to do in order to get to the cart. Yeah, you know what? I just didn't really need that thing that badly anyway. Or your autofill for your payment information not working. You know what? Maybe I'll buy this later, and then you never do. Things like that, like Amazon.
It's also the other end to talk about low friction. That's the entire reason why when you're going through a lot of stores, I know Best Buy is really funny for this because they basically put you through a maze. And that the walls of that maze are little things that don't cost way too much, but it's very easy for you to just be going by and go, oh yeah, I could grab one of those. I need some batteries. I could take some chips. I could use a new whatever, just cable, HDMI cable, whatever. They have all those things lined around the end because it's very low friction to grab those and buy them at the end.
So Tim Sweeney is not happy with the ruling, and there's other reasons for him to not be happy. Apple recently rejected Epic's request to reinstate its developer account so that they could relaunch Fortnite in South Korea, where third-party in-app payments will soon be required on iOS. And that's obviously the thing that got Fortnite banned in the first place. But here's the thing. Apple is not legally under any kind of obligation to reinstate Epic's dev account until they fall in line outside of South Korea, where that is not the law, at least not yet. So if Apple decides that they want to be vindictive about this, which I could absolutely see this being real personal here at this point, Fortnite might not ever return to iOS devices. Apple says that they're happy with the ruling. I really doubt it, but I think for Apple, this third-party payment systems battle is clearly over now that we've seen rulings in Japan, South Korea, and the US. It's a matter of time before this this flood just cannot be held back. So what else are they supposed to say about it? But it's also possible that both companies will appeal at some point, so it could be that none of this is final. So overall, here's really our discussion around this. Luke, is this a win for consumers? That's question number one. And for developers and consumers. And you can speak to both of those from your own personal experience.
So like I said earlier, I think this is the win of a battle, but not the win of a war. I think this is a better experience for consumers, and I think you are able to make a product that doesn't feel basically just like broken as a developer. Because like coming from a developer standpoint, not being able to communicate to a user that something is going wrong is really just dumb and bad. Like,
yeah,
you screwed up. If something goes wrong or the user can't do something, you should be like that's really, really basic user experience. You should be able to communicate to the user what is wrong or give the user an option. And the fact that you couldn't do either of those things in the past was terrible. And it was a really bad user experience for the consumers, right? Like, oh, let's use Netflix. I won't even use Floatplane. I want Netflix. I'm a new Netflix subscriber. I am one of many people in the world that are mainly consume content through my phone. I'm going to open the Netflix app on my phone. What? Like, what do I do? Am I just not allowed to use Netflix? Is it maybe not
Yeah.
fully compatible with my phone? Like, it's just a terrible user experience across the board. So yeah, I think it is an improvement, but I do agree with Tim that this isn't like a full win. This isn't a win of the war.
Now, here's kind of the big question at this point. I think when this whole thing went down, you and I were, I think, pretty close to being on the same page that Epic was doing the right thing. I mean, fundamentally, I agree with them that Apple is, and you could call it monopolistic. You could say it's an antitrust violation. You could say it's anti-competitive. It doesn't matter because they're all just kind of different heads of the same monster. It's all a company abusing a position of power that makes it impossible for other entities to compete with them. And abusing a position of power that in a way that they wouldn't be able to if other entities were able to compete with them in a completely fair and open market. And the word fair, I used that intentionally because it can mean a lot of different things. You could make the argument that the competition that we have now is fair because someone else could just make a really great product and make lots of money and lobby lawmakers. That's fair. Well, yeah, that's like a kind of fair, but not everyone actually has those kinds of resources, and that shouldn't be. Might should not make right. Right should just be right. So I think you and I were kind of on the same page that Epic was absolutely fighting a just and noble battle, but for not necessarily the most just or noble reasons. You know, obviously they had their eye on that, 30% of the money that they were just giving to Apple.
There's a huge amount of personal gain for Epic going into this. Yeah,
absolutely.
They've tried to frame it as like, oh no, we're just doing this for everyone else, and like, yeah, if they win that full war that I've been referencing, that would be very positive for
let's say they don't.
Else.
Let's say this is as far as it gets. Did they effectively just throw themselves upon their own sword for nothing but the benefit of everyone else? Because if they don't
not intentionally, but that's probably why Tim's upset.
If they don't get their developer account reinstated, they are not going to be getting any V-Bucks anywhere, even where in-app payments are mandated, or third-party in-app payments are allowed by law. So they will get literally nothing and will have burned all of that sweet 70% of V-Bucks money that they could have taken for, years of potentially being off the App Store. I mean, Apple as an organization, to imagine that they would be anything other than vindictive about this crusade that Epic has made very personal. I wouldn't actually say that it's Apple that made this personal. Epic has made it. They've taken it public. They've appealed to their individual users to try to sort of wage a war of consumer pressure against Apple. Like, they've fought tooth and nail, and you could even make the argument they've fought pretty dirty here. But at the end of the day, I guess
their opponent was fighting pretty dirty before Epic even joined the ring. So I feel like they kind of stooped to their level. But yeah, it's interesting. I appreciate the handout from the company that seems to be very happy to steal everything they can from everyone else. Thanks, Epic. I appreciate it. They like. Or not steal, but like direct copy, I guess. Every time I start trying to think about Epic in a positive light, I'm like, oh yeah, they just like completely copied PUBG and then Among Us. Very cool. Maybe they're not entirely on the side of like other developers,
yeah.
But yeah, this was, like I said, this is a benefit for us. This is a big benefit for Floatplane. I'm very happy that this happened. It is going to be very nice to be able to communicate to our users properly about what's going on. Do I think this is going to like drive a bunch of subscriptions? No.
Yeah. probably not.
Do I think it's going to create some less confused people? Yeah.